Hello, and welcome back to In the Wings, a Chattanooga Theater Center podcast. My name is Scott Dunlap, and I am your host. And today I have with me Sarah Miecielica and Chris Williamson. See what I did there?
I did.
We've had a little bit of an intro issue trying to get started because Chris Williamson is one of these people that can make me laugh at anything, honestly. Being on stage with him is a challenge.
It is for me, too.
So on that note, let's start with who you are, why you're here. We'll get into in just a little bit. But, I guess I should say up front that this is a seasonal podcast. This is a Halloween podcast, if you will, right? We're going to talk about ghosts and ghoulies. But tell us who you are, and we'll go into why you're here when we get into your stories. But so start us off.
Okay. I'm Chris Williamson, like you said. I am a 20-year Hamilton County school teacher.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. I teach at Udoa High, theater and art. And I started doing, do you want me to go into the play stuff?
Go
play
for it.
stuff? Okay.
Flex.
Back in the 90s.
There you go.
Probably 96, 97, I started auditioning for plays here and was in quite a few. And some with Scott Dunlap. Some directed by Scott Dunlap.
I think your first play was Barefoot in the Park.
That's correct.
Which was a part of our 75-year revival season.
Right, I remember that.
So that was 26 years ago.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And then you were also, interestingly enough, when we remounted Barefoot most recently, Haley Graham was originally cast as the telephone repairman, and she had to drop out because it was COVID and work situations and all this kind of stuff. We had cast her. We were 2 weeks from opening. Everything got shut down. When we came back, she was like, I'm not feeling too comfortable with it. So we needed to bring in a new telephone repairman. So you got to reprise your role like 25 years later.
Yes, that was cool. I enjoyed that. That was fun.
It was fun. And thank you for doing it. Otherwise, we would have.
You're welcome.
We would have struggled there. But so, what other things may people have seen? Let's see. I've directed you in a couple of things. Wrinkle in Time.
Wrinkle in Time. One. Yes.
And Barefoot.
Lobby Hero.
Lobby Hero.
We were in The Nerd together.
We were in there, which was incredibly difficult because you were a very funny person, and being on stage with you is incredibly hard.
That was a fun one. And I think the first one we were in together was Baby with the Bathwater.
Oh, no.
Is that, should I not have mentioned that?
It's okay. Yes, I think you're correct.
Okay.
It's a Halloween podcast, so it's cool that I shuddered. Ooh.
It was scary.
Scary. Ooh. There's stories, but they're not stories necessarily that we can repeat at this time.
That's a different podcast, probably.
It's a different podcast, yeah. But boy, when we do it, people are going to be tuning in for that. That's the T. We're going to put the T in theater.
There was a lot of tea.
There was a lot of tea.
There was a lot of tea.
Let's just say Baby with the Bathwater had a small but dramatic cast.
It did. The drama was not on the stage.
No.
But there was a lot of drama. You are correct.
Oh, my God. And it's one of those that's like layers, like an onion. When you start to think about it, you're like, oh, that happened. Oh, there's another thing that happened. Oh, but what about this?
Yeah.
It was a lot.
There was a lot. Yeah. That would be a podcast in of itself. Just the Baby with the Bathwater
It would
podcast.
be. Maybe we'll do that. We'll have like a little reunion.
Maybe no. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just do this one.
And also, though, I remember you in Glenn Ross.
Oh, yes, that was one of my faves.
That was a good Chris Williamson one.
Yes.
Do you have what's your favorite role that you've played?
Visiting Mr. Green.
Visiting Mr. Green was another Chris Williamson.
I believe my favorite.
Sonny Rosenthal.
Sonny Rosenthal, the great Sonny Rosenthal. It was just me and him.
Yep,
that was the cast.
Yeah,
and enjoyed it because of the story, the directing, and getting to work with Sonny. And I have good memories of that one.
And you've taught summer camp here too.
Yes, A lot.
A lot.
A lot.
Stand-up comedy, right?
Stand-up comedy, improv, sketch writing, stuff like that, yeah.
Well, I could take some of that.
Okay. That's a deal.
Deal. Done. Speaking of summer camp, you have also helped out our summer camp.
I certainly have.
Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
I'm Sarah Miecielica, and I worked here for, I think it was about 5 years as the production manager and set designer and technical director.
It seemed like longer. Was it only 5 years?
It was only 5 years.
Well, I mean, only. That's still a long time. It seemed like 12.
There were a lot of shows. We did a lot. There was
We did a lot.
It felt like a lot. A lot happened in those 5 years.
Yes. And this is like a little bit different for you. You're not usually, so this is kind of like people that want to know what Sarah's like. They can kind of see it, because you're.
I usually hide in the back a little bit.
I was going to say happy to be backstage,
I
but
am.
yes, hiding, potato, tomato. So tell us about your background.
I am primarily a set designer, but I've also worked in props a lot, and I've worked various theaters around the country. I've worked in Missouri at the Arrow Rock Lyceum Theater, in Texas at the Alley Theater in Houston, in New Jersey at the McCarter Theater. So I kind of made it around, and then we made it to Chattanooga and have been here for the longest we've been anywhere. And so I was here for a while, really enjoyed it here, and then decided to go into teaching, and am now over at Chat State.
Well, and it is a kind of like fate, really, that you ended up here at the theater center, even because you'd been hired to design something.
Yeah.
And then we lost our TD, and so then you came on staff in that way and never looked back.
Yeah, I was just in the right place at the right time.
Or the wrong place.
That could have been that.
The right time.
It was good. It was a good few years.
It was.
And
it
it's
was
still fun
good.
to come back and design some stuff here and
Yeah.
there. And
It was fun. It was good times.
it was.
Awesome. So the reason that I brought you to, so this is a Halloween podcast, a spooky podcast. And it was funny because the other day, the kids in the youth theater were asking me about some ghost stories and things. Do we have ghosts? Are we haunted? And I was actually talking with Sarah in my office, and she relayed a story that I did not know about.
Ooh, that means I didn't hear it either.
You don't know it either. And
I'm excited.
Like, it's good stuff.
Okay.
It's some really good stuff. So I think my ghost stories predate everybody. I think I was one of the first people to encounter, at least I'm sure there are ghost stories that predate mine, but like as far as we're concerned, I'll start, so to speak. So we were doing Lend Me a Tenor on the main stage and the Reluctant Dragon in the Circle. I was the youth theater designer, so I was designing the set and the costumes and everything for Reluctant Dragon during the day, and I was in Lend Me a Tenor, which Lend Me a Tenor was pretty prop heavy, pretty big set. It's like, so it was an interesting tech week. There was a lot to happen. It was all going well, but it was still busy. But what would happen is after Lend Me a Tenor, I would stay at night and work because I would be, after rehearsal, you're wired. Can't go to sleep right away. So I would go into the circle and work on Reluctant Dragon. And one night I was working on a dragon costume. I'm feeding it through the sewing machine. The sewing machine is pretty loud. I don't know if people have operated a sewing machine, but especially when you're right next to it, sometimes it's hard to hear somebody even in the same room. But, we'll have to get this sound and add it to the podcast. We can create it. But as I'm sitting at the sewing machine, I hear the sound of a pig weight. Now, the pig weights are for people who don't know, are like these, is it steel? Iron? What is it made out of?
Various ones are different, but yeah, they're steel or iron usually.
At least 2 inches thick, right? And we use them to prop open doors around here and stuff like that. So I'm sitting at the machine, and there's also a really distinct sound that it makes when it clinks into place, either on the fly loft or if it's in a door, like as we're pushing it up to the door or whatever, especially on cement, it has a nice scraping sound that's kind of satisfying, actually, unless you're by yourself or think you're by yourself in the theater. And I hear this scraping sound very distinctly, the pig weight being dragged along a cement floor. I think immediately, like, this is just a door that is starting to, push its way closed. But it went on for so long that it's like, well, the door would be closed by now. And it gets closer and closer and closer to the costume shop and louder over my machine. And then, literally tears are starting to, well up in my eyes. The hair on the back of my neck is starting to raise up. And I think, okay, well, it stopped briefly. And then I hear, ping, the last little drop right outside the costume shop door. So I went over to there's a little window in the costume shop door, and I look out into the hallway, which was not a help at all because the red exit signs were illuminating the hallway. So all I could see is red light. So it looks like the devil is out there, And, but I don't see a pig weight. What I did think was, well, here's the thing. If somebody is trying to scare me, they did it, and they can have whatever they want. I'm out. So I literally just turned off the lights, walked out the door, set the alarm, left. I even left the costume in the machine. The next day I came in, and Kay Jennings was like, was something going on? Did the needle break? Did what? No, I just left it. I was done. I was done for the night. What's crazy about that is that started like a whole week of events here, not just that one, but it was a chain reaction of stuff that happened. I know that you have several stories. I'm going to get back to the chain reaction stuff, but tell us about one of your experiences, Chris.
Okay, I have several. So I'll just go with the first one I think of. This could have been a coincidence, but it still was kind of spooky. It was during Glen Ross. The shop was open. There was nobody in there. It was dark. So I went in there to just pace back and forth and go over my lines.
Yeah, that happens a lot. People don't realize backstage there's lots of actors who are focusing and pacing in dark corners.
Right. And the shop is my favorite place to do it when there's nobody in there. So there was banging in the shop, in the back of the shop, and it didn't sound like a pipe. It just sounded like somebody hitting something with a hammer or something like that. And from the light that was outside the shop, you could see to the back. So I couldn't see anyone was back there, but it kept rhythmically.
Like the Telltale Heart.
Kind of like that. And I just said, will you stop? And it stopped. So that's a short one.
Oh, my God.
I have more, but that kind of creeps me out enough that I went in the hallway and went over my lines. But I will tell you, that area, the green room, and then it goes by the dressing rooms, and then the shop, and then there's the door. That area right there, when the lights are off and you're walking down there, you got to act like you're not scared.
Oh, you reminded me of another weird incident that happened one time. But yes, honestly, for me, it's the kitchen doors all the way to the costume shop door. That's the hallway that freaks me out the most.
There's very few places in this theater that feel creepy to me. Most theaters feel really creepy to me, and usually the theater space itself feels really creepy just because it's so open. Yeah,
and you're vulnerable. Well, there's where people are supposed to be looking at you, no one's looking at you. So it feels weird to be on an empty stage.
Yeah, but in this space, that's the area to me too, that at night when you're walking through there, there's just it just feels creepy.
The kitchen area?
Yeah. Right as you're walking through there. But it's not always either. Sometimes it's fine, and other times you just walk through and you're like, it just doesn't feel right.
Right. It's,
Right.
Yeah, and I hate going from the back of the loading door for the circle to the stage door. That little area is creepy too.
It is.
What did that remind you of?
What?
You said it reminded you of something else.
It reminded. So I had forgotten about this, and I don't know if this was a spirit or if it was a person who was just not supposed to be here. But there was one time I was locking up for a show. Beth Gumnick was in rehearsal at the same time. I had gone all the way down to the main stage, and as I was walking towards the main stage, I saw somebody walk by from the main stage lobby to the bathrooms in that little hallway, and it was a big nope. And I was like, again, the hair rises up on the back of your neck, and you're like, oh my God, what's happening? And so I knew that Beth had just gotten out of rehearsal, so I called her. And she, of course, is like, hey, what's up? What you did? And I'm fine. And we're talking, we're just totally casually. And I was like, by the way, there's someone in the building, and I need some help. So she came back by. At this point, I had already gone into the main stage area. Now, nobody's supposed to be down there. I'd gone down there, I checked everything. All the lights are out. All the doors are shut. I'm walking back through the doorway towards Beth. She's on her cell phone and I'm on my cell phone. And I said, so I just went up and there's no one there. And then it creeps me out even now. As I'm talking to her, she goes, they just went by again.
Oh.
No.
Yes. Yes. And so like she and I we went through the theater. We went row by row. We were looking in the aisles to make sure somebody wasn't hiding. I don't know what we were going to do when we found them, but there was not a trace of anybody either. And it was weird that we both saw somebody within like a 10-minute period of time, and I had completely forgotten
That's
about that.
a good one.
And here's the thing. The person that went by, there are no features. Like neither one of us could describe anything about them. It was just like a black figure that went across the door. Super creepy.
Speaking of that creepy hallway, there was one night that I was leaving, and it was one of those like really late nights where you're here, and I got that creepy feeling. And normally when I'd leave, I'd walk through the hallway by the conference room and through the offices, and I just got this feeling, and I was like, no,
Not today.
so I was just gonna go straight. And then I heard when the little storage rooms were bathrooms, I heard one of those doors shut. And then I heard talking, clear as day. And I was like to the point that I was like, oh, Scott's here. Like, because you were the only other one who would be here that late at night. And I was like, oh, Scott's here. And so then I just walked down that way, certain you were here. Nobody was here. And I was like, I'm out. I just went, and as I set the alarm, I had my back to the wall because I was like, either someone's here or someone's not. And I don't like either one.
Neither of those answers is appropriate. So to piggyback on it, kind of the continuation of the story, the director of Reluctant Dragon, Kate Christian, she was helping me. She was also in Lend Me a Tenor. She played my girlfriend in that. So like after rehearsal, after tech, we would go and work a little bit on her show because she was the director of Reluctant Dragon because we were both burning the candle at both ends. And this is back in the old days when we would have to do this sometimes. It was an all-nighter job. So like we were here all night. Now, because of the pig weight situation, we never left either person's sight, including we would go to the circle bathrooms and stand in the doorway, make eye contact and be like, ready, go. We would like run in, do our business, come back out and meet at the door again. So we never left each other's sight the whole time. Well, we did some painting in the scene shop. We did some costume stuff. We get everything done about 7 a.m. We're packing up to leave for the day, and she can't find her purse. And so we look all of the places that we have been, and she can't find her purse. And finally, she's like, okay, I have to tell you something. I cashed my paycheck, and my entire paycheck is in my purse. In cash. So it's not just like it's missing and things can be replaced. She's like, there's several hundreds of dollars in cash. So it became a little bit more desperate. Well, people are starting to show up for work at this point. So we put an alert out for everybody, all points bulletin, keep an eye out for the purse. Go through the entire day, nobody can find the purse. The kids show up for rehearsal, and she said, hey guys, I'm going to let you know, like I've lost my purse, and I'm going to give you a cash reward of $200 if you can find it for me. And the kids were like, your purse is behind the set. It had been put under the stairs on the set. Neither of us had come into that room all night.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was like the whole night we had of course talked about the ghost and stuff. And there were like some things. There was a shadow that passed over us while we were washing out paintbrushes. And I was like, did you see that? and she was like, nope. and I said, yes, you did. Because if you hadn't, you would have said, what? And I kept jokingly saying like, Kate doesn't believe in the ghost, but I believe in you. And then her purse got hidden. It was so weird. And found everything was intact. It was just a trick.
Moved.
Yeah, it just moved. Super creepy.
I was talking about shadows.
Yes.
Here's another one.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I was in Lost in Yonkers, and this was during a performance. I was on stage saying my lines, and out of the corner of my eye, it looked like something was above us, like a black cloth, like moving back and forth. And I said, something's hanging there. It's about to fall. But it looked like it was swirling around. Not like a bird, but like, I don't know, like somebody waving a flag or something like that. And so as soon as I walked off stage, I turned around and looked up, and there's nothing there. There's nothing hanging there or anything like that. So I let it go. I didn't say anything. So one of the actresses came off stage. I was standing right there, and she said, I couldn't remember my lines hardly because of whatever that was flying around above the stage. And I hadn't said anything about it, but apparently we both saw it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was weird.
That is weird. That's also weird to like in a show. Like, was
Right.
it tech or was it a show?
No, it was a show.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, because I could see it like right above my eye line. Yeah, it was weird.
You also have a weird thing with your keys.
Yeah, so it was another one of those late nights, and I was done and I was ready to go home, and I couldn't find my keys. So I was just frustrated, and I lose things. I put things down wherever, so that part's not weird. But I'm just looking all over, and I go back to my office. I'm looking all over my office, and at that time there was like when you walked out of my office, there was a work table right there that you walked past, and it was really common for me to set them there. So I kept checking that table, and there was other stuff on the table, but I kept checking that table. And then I kept going into the theater where I was, checking all over. Finally, I just got super frustrated. I was in the middle of the shop, and I go, where the hell are my keys? And I heard them hit the ground. And I went over, and they were next to that table on the ground. And I checked that table multiple times, but I just heard them hit the ground, and there they were.
Oh, nice.
That is so creepy. That is like, I literally chills down my spine right now. And here's what's crazy is like that area that you're talking about is similar to the area where you would have heard the noise coming from the knocking as well.
Right.
So maybe the scene shop. I've never. Now I will say, like, I don't like that end of the scene shop. There is some bad juju down there, right? There's something about it. I don't know, but it does. It feels very like if I'm in it, I feel okay. But if you're on the other end, there's something about it. It feels like you're being watched or something.
Was any of that the scene shop? Was any of that there when this was the little theater?
No. All that's
So-
new. So
all that was
it would
new.
have been outside technically.
Okay.
Which kind of brings me. So after the purse disappearance and the wait, again, we were crunch time. So Rodney was helping, and he was just painting the floor black for me in the neutral space that we weren't using.
I know this story.
Oh, this was
is-
crazy.
This is awesome.
He put a full can new black paint on top of like a block that we use blocks for all sorts of different things, and I think in the show we were using the block as a piece of the set, and he put the paint on top, and we were talking about the ghost, and we were talking about whether or not the ghost might exist, and Rodney says, I don't believe in ghosts. I was working on the set. He's working on the black. We're probably 15 feet from each other. And as he's doing his I don't believe in ghosts speech, he walks over to me. And he's like, I don't really believe in ghosts, but I will say, the Circle Theater used to be open underneath. It was like on a pedestal, kind of like the UFO house, right? It was on a pedestal, and you could see underneath it. And he goes, we would come to work some mornings and homeless people would camp out under there. And of course, some of them would die in the night, from either the weather conditions or just old age or whatever. So sometimes you'd arrive at work and there'd be an ambulance taking a body out, So if there were ghosts, there's definitely a reason that, people have died on this property. Plus, also, I don't think people realize just the history of the North Shore. Not only do we have like the Trail of Tears, we have this was a encampment for freed slaves on this side, and of course, I'm sure people were still in poor health and dying, and just because you were freed didn't mean everything was better. So, I think that the ground itself here has a lot of potential unfinished business, But as he's talking about this, he turns to go back and paint the floor, and the paint can had been turned upside down on the floor. Now, if it had fallen off of the block, the chances of it turning upside down perfectly, there was not a spill around it. It looked like somebody had done the trick of like where you turn a glass of water up and you pull the card or whatever out from under it, and now you have to pick it up and the water is going to go everywhere, which is exactly what happened with the paint.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like the ghost was listening to us. It was like, oh, you don't believe? Watch this. You know, it was so creepy.
Without you hearing it.
Without us hearing it. Yeah, we're both like 15 feet from it max. You know? Yeah. Or seeing it.
Yeah.
Like there was no response to it because it was creepy. It was
creepy.
And
That
especially
one's
to happen in the
strange.
middle of the day,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So,
All right, I have my best one.
okay. Tell it.
And then I want to tell you a funny one. Okay. So this is when I was in visiting Mr. Green. And I asked if I could come in about an hour early so that I could go on the stage. There's a lot of blocking in that, and a lot of monologues. So I was going over my monologues, and the house lights were not on. And I can't remember what lights were on, maybe just the stage lights. But as I was saying a monologue, I looked where the audience would be, and in the back seat, there's this woman sitting there. And I can see her hair. It's like pulled up. She's wearing she has like a white collar. And it looked like, I can't tell if it was blue or black dress, but just sitting there watching. And so I kept going. And then it got to where I was getting a little creeped out. So I just stopped and I said, hello. And there was no response. I'm looking at her. And I said, who's sitting back there? No response. And so I go to the side steps, walk down, and I guess I'll look down for a minute, look back up. There's nobody there at all. And I walked back there. I walked over to where she would have been sitting. There was no one back there. I didn't look down long enough for somebody to get up and leave. Just disappeared.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That one creeped me out for a long time. And I did not go on the stage for a while by myself. There was nobody. I don't think there was anybody here. I think they unlocked the door, did some stuff, left, and I was here by myself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so terrifying. Again, when you're on stage and you can feel where there should be people and then they're not, or in this case, there is someone who's not supposed to be there, very odd.
Well, and when it's dark in the house and you've got lights on stage, like even when it's not the stage lights, just even work lights, you can't really see very well. So then it just,
And like you said, no features.
Right. Nothing distinctive.
Right.
Yeah.
But definitely the outline of a person. Yeah. That creeped me out.
So creepy. What's your funny one?
Okay. So if you had some, graduates from youth theater here, they might swear that the circle was haunted. Well, this was when I was doing this traveling school shows, which you were involved with.
I did that, yeah.
And we did that during the day and then came back, and it was like 3 or 4 hours later, I was supposed to be here for rehearsal for something. I can't remember what it was. But so I thought, I'm not going to go home. That'd be a waste of time. I'm going to go in the circle where there's nothing and lay down in the chairs, because that's when the soft chairs were in there. And I'm going to go to sleep for a while. So that's what I did. So I woke up to kids opening the door and coming in the circle, and they were all whispering and stuff like that, like, this is creepy and all that stuff. So I gave them a good Amityville Horror, get out. And they screamed and ran out. And years after that, I told that story, and this girl in camp said, we thought it was haunted. To nose me.
That's awesome. It's interesting, though, because there have been a number of stories. I mean, there are enough instances where definitely questionable,
Something's happened.
Something is happening. It is funny because I think because of the woman in the audience story, like people call the ghost Miss Annie, but I don't think it is Miss Annie. I don't know. I will say my dealings have all been sort of mischievous and seem borderline mean. You know what I mean? It's get out without the get out. It's more like I'm just going to creep you out, or I'm ready for you to go. Here are your keys.
Right.
It's kind of playful.
Yes.
It's like prankish, I guess. Even with the knocking sound and me saying stop and it's stopping.
Yeah.
Oh God. Like something playing with you or something like that.
Did you have any more experiences?
I can't think of any. There was one night, this is not a ghost experience, but there was this one night that I was here and I was cleaning brushes. And I think you and George were here. You had stayed, I was painting the floor and you were just hanging out with me. And you both were like, oh, do you want us to stay? And I was like, no, I'm good. It's not scary in here. I'm good. And so I'm just washing my brushes and it's just really, really quiet. And all of a sudden the compressor kicks on, which is right next to the paint sink. And I just about jumped right out of my shoes.
Yeah, that's a noise that pretty much any time of day can
it's just so
completely
loud.
chill you to the bone for sure. Did you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. Although, stuff that happens, it makes me listen harder, especially when I'm backstage and it's dark.
Yeah.
I can hear every creak in the building.
It is interesting. I mean, I feel like for me, it's been several years since I've had an incident, so I feel like whatever it is, like we're good.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's like, I'll leave you alone.
Oh, that's him, and doesn't really bug me anymore. But it is interesting. It is interesting to some nights you can still get that creepy feeling locking up or whatever, And then occasionally there'll be like a real person who scares you.
Yeah.
I did have a lady. This is a sort of related. A couple of years ago, I was locking up the building with our sound guy Gary, and I go into the hallway, and there's this woman trying on hats, and I was like, "Hey, we don't put on the hats. Like, we don't put on other people's costumes." And she's like, "Oh, they're so pretty." And I said, "I know." And I'm my first thought was that maybe she was a grandparent of a kid or something. As I got closer, I was like, okay, this feels like maybe somebody who is in an alternate, kind of universe. They have either taken something or drunk enough of something that they're feeling pretty special, and they have wandered in. And so I was like trying to shoo her out, and we finally got her out of the building. This is like 11 o'clock at night. I go home. I get on Facebook. I'm unwinding. This is like 1 o'clock in the morning, and someone posted a picture of the lady that I just shooed out of the building. She had escaped from a nursing home, like in South Georgia, and they were looking for her. I felt so bad, and it was a weird thing. I had to call. So I called the number on the post, and it was like the police station in Georgia, and they were like, "No, you need to call the local police." So I called the local police, and they were, of course, like, "No, you need to call the police station in Georgia." I called the family of her of the woman had posted it, so I found them and messaged them on Facebook and said, "Listen, I'm just trying to get somebody to get to your grandmother. Like, I saw her. It was horrible. I felt so bad, and part of that is because there was." She had Alzheimer's, but there was nothing outwardly something was clearly wrong, but it didn't seem.
Right, but you didn't.
And she didn't have the words to tell me what was going on either. Right. But it felt so bad, They found her though. They did find her.
That's
so
good.
Happy ending.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was here one day and there was a rehearsal going on and somebody was supposed to lock up the building and didn't. And I was the only one here in the back of the building. And I come out to the front and there's just like a bunch of people in the lobby just hanging out. And I'm like, "Oh, hey, what are you guys doing?" They're like, "Oh, we just came in." I was like, "All right, well, we're not open right now." So they're like, "Oh, we just want to get some like brochures and use the bathroom." And I'm like, "Yeah, we're not open, so I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." And they were just like kind of pushy about it, like, "Well, we were just gonna hang out for a while." I was like, "No, I'm gonna need you to leave."
Yeah. This is why it's important that we always lock the doors, especially stage managers.
Yes.
that are listening. I've had some people come in and scare me too. Like I had Spike with me one day and he was going nuts barking. And when I finally looked, I was like, oh, I'm not in the building by myself. Okay.
And it's such a big, like vast space that there's just so many places people could hide. That.
Right. And if somebody opens the door, it doesn't close all the way sometimes. And
Right.
anybody could walk in.
Yes. Yeah. So ghost or not, regardless, it can be a creepy place sometimes. Very good. Well, thank you guys for talking to me. It's been fun. And now here's the cool part. We actually have record of our stories because I've told your stories over the years as well to many people. So now other people we can say, oh yeah, there's a whole podcast on it. Go listen. Maybe we'll add to it. Maybe things will happen. I will say it does lately. It's felt a little weird closing up, but I haven't had any actual weird experience, but just that weird icky feeling that you have going down the hallway. So a couple of things to wrap us up. We have coming up, be sure to get tickets for Angry, Raucous, and Shamelessly Gorgeous. That's in our Circle Theater opening November 8th, and it runs for 3 weeks. And also we have for the holiday season, Roald Dahl's Willy Wonka, opening December 6th and running through January 6th. You can get tickets for those now, or you could get anytime tickets and see those as well as some other shows. They also make great gifts. Also, if you have any questions, be sure to email us at hello@theatercenter.com. One of the quick things I was going to talk about, it's a question we often get, is theatrical rights and how does that work? And it is interesting. I don't think people realize that when you do a show, you have to pay for each performance, and you have to apply for a license, and they can deny you a license. They can say, no, it's not available right now. Like with Waitress, we were lucky. We got that early, and they approached us and said, hey, would you like to do this show? But for plays, it's usually a straightforward fee, but with musicals, they take a percentage of your house. So it's a complicated mathematical equation. And with musicals, this is changing a little bit, but very often we rent those materials. So even after you do the musical, you have to return everything. You have to erase everything out of the scripts and out of the music and return that. Whereas with plays, they let you keep the script, which they're changing that a little bit. It seems like some things are changing since COVID, especially a lot more digital stuff.
Yeah, digital is getting more common.
Yeah. And being able to, print off your script. Yeah. They'll send you a PDF and then you go from there. But it is not, it's not cheap, actually. I mean, I think that's the thing is in order to just have the rights, just to be able to say, hey, we're doing SpongeBob SquarePants is several $1,000s. And that's before we cast it, before we costume it, before we put props in hands and set on the stage. So it can be quite an expensive undertaking. And the other thing is, it's really important that you do it because if you get caught doing a play without paying the rights, then you lose the whole catalog. You can't do anything from those people. So it's an important thing. So, and a lot of people I think people are always shocked to learn that it's not just like a fee, like a one-time, you give them a couple $100 and you're done. They take all sorts of things into account, the number of performances and where you're located and yada, yada, yada. So we were going to do Pippin several years ago and we got the rights pulled because it was on tour. So we couldn't do the show. So just for those that are curious, I thought it would be an interesting little topic of conversation. Did you guys, was there anything else that you wanted me to ask or did you want to talk about? Anything? No?
I don't think so.
They're both like, no. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being my guests. Thank you for listening to us. I hope that this makes your next play at the Theater Center even more spine tingling.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.